Welcome to another episode of The Modern Executive. I'm your host, Aizaz Nayyer. My guest today has built a 25-year career in the recruitment space. He's co-founded multiple companies that have done over $15 million in annual revenue. Today, we're going to learn more about how he did it and where he thinks the recruitment industry is headed. Co-founder and managing partner of Arthur Lawrence, Bejal Patel. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I know you've been traveling today. You have a lot of meetings coming up as well, so I appreciate you taking the time out. You're taking the call from a hotel room. How's it been? How's your day? How's the travel been so far?
Started at 3:30 this morning. It's it's about to get kicked off properly now. I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
traveling
And
first part of the morning and I had a couple of meetings and that's when I landed.
yeah. And
Busy.
a lot of your time does go into traveling. I hope you enjoy it because I mean, you do a lot of it.
I enjoy meeting with the people. I'll put it that way. I don't know if I enjoy the travel as much, but I love meeting with the people. Meeting with everybody makes the travel worth it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So BJ, you've obviously had a long career in the recruitment space, and there's a lot that we're looking to unpack today. But let's start from the beginning because first of all, that accent, there's a British accent in there. Take us back.
There
Where
is.
does that come from?
Born and brought up in the countryside in England, north of London, about 100 miles, 150 miles north of London, a place called Staffordshire. Not very many people have heard of it because it is small town and it is in the countryside. But that's kind of where I was born and brought up. Moved to this country when I was, I think, 14, 13, 14.
And then in the summer, England came home to you in a way with the
It
World
did.
Cup.
I got to see at least Argentina and England play. It wasn't in our favor, but nevertheless a historic match to attend.
Yeah, for sure. And so 13, 14, you moved to the States. Take us forward from
Yeah,
there.
I'll walk you through it very quickly. So moved to all places the state of Alabama. I don't think when family moved from the UK, I remember my father telling me, "Oh, we're going to go to Atlanta," and so I was like, "So I've heard of Atlanta it's a city." So we land in Atlanta, and then he's like, "Okay, we're going to get on another plane now, and we're going to go to a place called Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which is beautiful part of the country, beautiful place as well." But it was a 8-seater plane or 5-seater plane. We all, me and my family, we hopped on and the luggage came in the plane after the second plane because they couldn't fit the luggage on the same plane. And for a moment I was thinking, I thought we were supposed to be in Atlanta. My father then tells us like, yes, we're actually going to be living not too far from Atlanta, only like a 5-hour drive or 4-hour drive. And so I think Atlanta was just the hook. But nevertheless, ended up in a small town in North Alabama, a great place to grow up, fantastic place to raise a family. And my father got a job transfer from the UK to an opportunity to come to the States. So, he took that and we ended up there. So I did my high school education and my university studies in Alabama. Learned about American football. Actually, Alabama is very, very passionate about college football. They have two very big college football teams, and that's how I learned the game a little bit. But nevertheless, ended up going to uni there, and shortly thereafter, I ended up in Atlanta. Actually, after graduating, I did a my first job was in Atlanta. That's kind of culture shock because coming from England, going to a small town where population was probably about 3,000 in Muscle Shoals, it wasn't very much. So it was a big culture shock, and certainly something to adapt to. And they had to adapt to me. And funny story, I actually failed English my first year in this country.
No way.
And I went to a Church of England school, grammar school, it's just we spoke two different types of English, right? So, but I quickly caught on, and they quickly caught on to me, and realized that I think it was more just getting used to the vernacular, the dialect, and some of the work habits that are different from school to school, country to country. But yeah, funny story. But yeah, the Queen's
Who would have
English.
thought?
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
So you studied in Alabama and you got your first job. Tell me about your first job quickly. Like, was it by chance that you ended up in the recruitment space?
It was. So I actually got a job with a consulting organization doing Oracle development. tech work. And I didn't have a tech degree, but I was doing tech work, and it was really just doing small gigs here and there. And then finally, a company picked me up to help them train their clients and customers with their software. Being in front of people, realized that's when I realized like interacting with people, being in front of people was my thing. And I was able to speak layman terms, complex technology and business situations into simple layman terms and bring it to a very simple format. And so that was sort of went to a company and worked for a consulting company. Then I went and did some education services for a technology company, trained their staff, traveled all over the country to train them on their business intelligence tools that they made business intelligence products great. And so that's where I learned that I need to be in front of people. And then, the Y2K and the .com boom and crash happened. And right in those, between the time the .com and the Y2K timeframe happened, I was getting a lot of calls for jobs, for opportunities. And often I'd get called by 10 recruiters. Back then we had answering machines. So when I'd come home from work, I'd just press play and I'd hear all these 5, 10 different messages from recruiters calling me about, hey, I've got a contract opportunity here. I've got a contract opportunity here. I'd love to talk to you. And so one of the recruiters that I had talked to, I actually went to visit him in the office, and me and him hit it off. We talked about just opportunities, and what intrigued me was his business. How did he do what he did? He was talking to multiple people a day, and I liked the engagement that he had and the energy he had. And he introduced me to the company of the president of the company, and I was asking the president of the company, so how do you keep track of your candidates? This was back, when Oracle came out with Oracle version 7. So it was like I'm dating myself here a little bit. So they said, well, we keep a access database and we use Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, man, I can create a relational database for you. And so I helped them come up with a relational database and basically an applicant tracking system, a very simple form of an applicant tracking system. Built that for them. In return, the guy said, I'll teach you everything I know about the business. And he did. He taught me everything from basically scratch to, where to go to launch and how to operate the business. And that's where I learned the business. And he said, I'll even hire you as a recruiter. And so that was my first break at the recruiting business and learning how to recruit. And I got to work for the guy who was trying to recruit me for a technical job. And he became my mentor, a phenomenal guy, probably one of the most influential guys that shaped my career, I think, in the recruitment business. He taught me all about recruiting. He taught me all about people and things to look for and how to speak to people and really, everybody thinks, oh, it's so easy to talk, but it's not. You have to have a compelling idea. You have to have a compelling story to engage people. And back then, everybody was sought after. If you could spell computer, you could figure a way to get in front of a recruiter. And after the crashes happened, it became really scarce. So then you really had to have a hook. You had to define why you're good at what you do and why a technical resource needs to work with you rather than work with the 20 other recruiters that are calling them. And this guy really taught me all of that. So that was a phenomenal growth in a matter of a couple of years. He really taught me everything I probably needed to know, and I just practiced it every day. And so that's kind of where the recruitment career started off.
Yeah, and this is in a entirely different world, pre-LinkedIn. What was the recruiter's experience like
Yeah.
then? What resources did you have access to?
Yeah, I mean, the white pages, telephone books, books of records of chemists, or, if there was any kind of user group directories. Uh, a lot of them were, I remember we would go to conferences and we would look at the fishbowl where everybody put their business cards in, and we would kind of look and say, okay, so and so, let me write this name and number down. Let me write this name and number down. Go and meet people. It was a what I call a ground war, right? It was like you were on the ground, really looking up people through yellow pages, white pages. You would call publications and figure out, okay, there's a book of lists of these professionals and a book of list of these professionals. You just buy those books or rent those books out from somebody. That's when you would receive resumes through fax. We were receiving resumes through fax at that time.
Wow.
Pretty archaic times, but it
And this is,
taught good habits.
yeah, yeah. And this is the world then where you ended up co-founding your first company.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
One of the startup companies that I came to work for basically came in a year after I got married, or the year I got married, and said, "Hey, we're shutting shop." And I'm like, "What do I do?" And so luckily, obviously, we were very successful, but I think the owner just wanted to be in a position where he wanted to retire, and he wanted to get out of the business, cash out, and enjoy his life. And so myself and another colleague of mine there at that company decided, hey, let's just we've got enough of a network where we can go out and start our own. And so basically he found all the money and the operations piece of it. And I found, let me go get the business and I'll knock on the doors and I'll go find the people as well. So initially I was not only just getting the business, I was also recruiting for the business. Right. So I'd go get a requirement, go fill a requirement, go back out, and he would help with some of the sales stuff as well. So he had a very broad role. I had a very defined role of go get the business and go find the candidates. That's kind of how it started. We started with two people and we took that to, about 14, 15 million dollars over the course of, 7 to 10 years. In that, as that grew, obviously our team grew. We had a recruitment team, developed a recruitment team, developed training manuals, developed a sales team, developed a business development, account management team, again, developed training material for those as well. And primarily I was the one who was really hands-on with that. And my business partner always used to like to call himself Charlie from Charlie's Angels. Nobody knew who Charlie was, right? And so he was a background guy. He didn't want to be, he's like, I'll sit in the background. You go get what you need to do and you be good in that area. And he was very creative. So he'd come up with some fantastic creative marketing ideas and things to collaborate with other companies and clients. And I think that's what made us a really good, I think, team, is that he had initially a very sort of a very creative aspect to sales, and he knew how to tell stories. And a lot of what I know in sales today, and whatever I've done in business development and relationship management and relationship growth, was really because of what I had learned from Mike back in my recruitment days and what I learned from my business partner from my ROI days. And, that was, I think, very pivotal part for me to grow into what I've done, up till date, so to say.
Yeah, it sounds like a great story, and we've only touched it on a very surface level. So I'd like to go a little bit deeper into it.
Sure.
Tell me about, those initial days when you were like, you've taken this jump and you're like, I'm gonna do my own thing now, taking this company and taking this challenge head on. Tell me about those initial days. Tell me about some of the initial deals that maybe you closed, any that were particularly satisfying, or some that you remember, maybe one where there was one of those great stories you had to tell, for example, to close that deal, anything from those days.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I had to realize. Number one, it was a very exciting time, but yet it was super scared. I was super scared because I was going out on my own. I had just got married. And I was telling my business partner, he's like, listen, it's all or nothing for us, for both of us. And so,
And how old are you here, just for like a
uh,
reference?
circa 30, 31 maybe, right?
Yeah.
Around this time. And so we jumped in, and it was a very unknown space in the terms of, like, we knew the business, but there's something about being a part of a company where everything else is run for you except your job. Now you're in a position where you have to know and think about everything else. And that's, I think, where we balanced ourselves well in that, I think, my business partner and I. But, the biggest thing that I remember was the excitement of chasing new clients. And, that was one of the driving factors for me to be successful. I mean, I love the chase, the satisfaction I get when I actually sign the contract that, allows us to do business with the client. I spent probably onwards of 3 years trying to get into the first major client, enterprise client. Most of the other clients were, because I had done recruitment for a few years, I had enough people placed in companies where I could go to them and say, tell me a little bit about your organization and who are the leaders in the organization. And they were kind enough to introduce me to those leaders, and I would meet them and would, sign on contracts. And we got up to 120, 130 contracts, at ROI, in our first initial, push. And, it didn't all happen overnight, but it happened over time. And the chase was, the most one of the hardest chases I had was, an enterprise oil and gas client, where for about 2 years I had cold called them. I had gone and met with a bunch of people, and it was one of those trial and errors. You had to find somebody who liked your story. So happened that one day when I just made a phone call, and the guy goes, if you're ready to meet, I can meet right now, like in 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes. And at this time, my office was at least half an hour away. And so I told this guy, I said, listen, I will make it there in 15 minutes. I am 30 minutes away, but I'm going to make it there in 15 for you if you give me the opportunity. And he said, you've got 15 minutes. I made it in 17 and a half. I remember this. It's very clear. I made it like I was 2 minutes late because he told me you're 2 minutes late for the meeting. And, I told him that, obviously Houston is a big city. Traffic is bad everywhere. Anyway, I get there 2 minutes late, start speaking with him, start talking to him about his problems. The first thing he told me is, you're the first person that hasn't asked me, a recruiter or salesperson that hasn't asked me, do you have any openings that I can help you with? Because I started off the opening about him. Tell me about you. Tell me about what challenges you're facing. Tell me about everything that you feel you have issues and pains, when it comes to resourcing. Just tell me about that. That's all I want to know. We'll get to the business down the road. And so we started talking. And as we were talking, we started really engaging in a strategic conversation rather than a tactical conversation. And a few minutes later, he calls in all the other people that I've been trying to call for, I don't know how many, for 2 years. He starts calling all the directors in. And this guy happened to be a VP. So he's called all the directors in, and all the directors sit around this table and we're all talking. He said, from now on, we're going to use Mr. Patel's company for our resourcing. And I didn't even ask for the business. It just happened. But it was one of those really like challenging stories. I don't know how many lunches I spent in people that I needed to get to somebody else. I would, get those out to lunch. I'd deliver coffee. I'd deliver donuts. I'd deliver cookies. I'd deliver cards. I found out people's birthdays and I'll just send them. Sometimes competition's fierce. So I just happened to get what they say, you have to create your luck. And I think that's what happened, because I just kept calling and calling and calling and calling and trying different people at different days and different times. And so happened to connect with that gentleman that day, that time. And he told me, hey, you got 15 minutes to get here if you want really an opportunity to talk with me. And so today, 21 years later, they're still a client of ours. And they're still one of my biggest clients. I'll say that he moved on from that organization, but he really changed trajectory of the company for me and the growth of our company because of the opportunity he gave us. That's one.
That's a
Another
fantastic story, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Another cool story. I'll tell you this one quick story that we had. We're chasing somebody for onwards of 6 months. This one person that I needed to get a hold of. And finally, I created this little package for the individual. I mailed in this package where it was a pair of glasses, a little pocket watch, a little calendar book. And then I put a note in there and I sent it to him. And I said, I would like to ask you to take a closer look at my business card and ask for some time on your calendar. So yeah, I put all these ingredients in, and it was one of those things that, it worked. And then I told everybody else in the company, this worked. So they all started using it, and we started getting meetings with people. It was just one of those things like you chase, you trial and error, and eventually something will give, and it will give you an opportunity. So that was one of the creative things that we did to try and get in front of people.
Yeah, that's honestly, I absolutely loved it. And I think it kind of boils down what sales is like into that story, right? It's persistence and also creativity. I mean, You have to come up with new ways, and it's always changing. Like that same trick that you used 20 years ago is, you have to change it now, and so on, right? But I love that story. And so now ROI staffing, we're growing the business, we're hiring people. Tell me about your first hire. Like you've been solo for all this time. Now
Yeah.
you're at a stage where you need to hire people. Tell me about that.
As good as I thought I was at hiring people, initially I had a challenge in hiring for myself. It was one of the most challenging things, identifying somebody. And, because you want to replicate yourself, you think that, you are the ideal situation. So you want another Bejal Patel. And what you realize is that there are people better than Bejal Patel sometimes with things, right? Like all the ingredients, I might be good in this aspect, but other people are better in it. And some things are good and bad. So the first hire I had was somebody from not a staffing background. I hired this person not from a staffing background. A salesperson came in from the real estate industry, oddly enough. And I hired that person based on aptitude, based on attitude, and what I saw in her background as an unrelenting sort of passion for telling stories. And she told stories phenomenally. And I thought that made her such an amazing salesperson. It really did. I mean, she was one of the most successful salespersons that I've ever worked with and worked for me. She just knew how to tell stories. And when you can tell a story, that sells. And so I try to emulate all the hires off of that. And I didn't really care too much that the person didn't know the staffing, because you can teach staffing mechanics, but you can't teach really somebody how to tell a story.
Yeah.
You cannot teach that work ethic, that passion. That's really sort of inbuilt. I think it's in the DNA of somebody, and you either have that or you don't. I think that's my belief.
Yeah, I would second that as well. I mean, there's a lot of times where you want to teach someone certain things, and it's also very dependent on how coachable they are in the first place. And then of course, like you said, I guess you can call it DNA, or you can call it the like in sports we have talent, right? So there's an intrinsic talent that you can build on top of. So you need the base or foundation there for sure. All right. So that's pretty interesting as well, because it's always tougher hiring for yourself, isn't it? And
It really
you
is.
yeah. And now you go from hiring those people to building teams. Then you have performance reviews, you're trying to see how the team's performing and so on. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you create that company culture in those early
Yeah.
days?
So, the challenging part, a little bit of the challenging part of this was we were building the delivery team and the sales team at the same time. So you would add a salesperson and you'd add a couple of recruiters. You'd add another salesperson, add a couple more recruiters. Um, I used my baseline as my metrics, right? And that that evolved over time because obviously industry changes, mechanics of the industry change, ease of doing business and ease of not doing business were fluctuating as well. But basically, I used what metrics I had. I took my metrics and I said, okay, it took me, let's just say from the sales side, it took me 20 meetings a week for me to get 3 job orders. Okay, that's the minimum you're going to have to do because I know that's what it's going to take at least for me. Maybe you can do it in 2 meetings. That's great. And in all honesty, the lady I was talking to you about, the first salesperson came and, blew me out of the water. She did phenomenal. And she didn't have to make those 100 calls. And that's what I learned, that metrics there's a certain place for metrics in our staffing in our recruiting industry, but it doesn't mean that every person is created equal in that sense. And what I mean by that is not every person has to make 100 calls to get 1 meeting. If they say make 100 cold calls, you'll get 10% return. Not everyone's like that, and not everybody has to make cold calls. People know people in other industries who can connect you to people, and so developing those metrics and the performance metrics started to really boil down to taking what it took me, what it took my top salesperson, and sort of combining and getting the median average. And also from a recruitment perspective, same thing. I would always ask my recruiters every morning, hey, how many people have you hit? How many people have you hit? And at some point I realized like it's not all about how many people you hit. Maybe in certain roles it is, where there's high volume, but it's not. It's all about the network. It's all about who you know and who you connect with. So developing those metrics became very challenging because some of it is subjective, especially in sales and in recruiting it is. And, I like to refer to recruiting and staffing as a science and an art, right? The science is you have to have quantitative mechanics to keep the business running. And the art is there's a navigation that you want to take your clients and candidates through to get them to where you want to get them. And so developing those metrics over the course of time, it took about a year really to develop those metrics. Even after I was bringing people on board, I would define them and then I'd say, okay, we're going to change it and we're going to change it again. And, I'm sure it was frustrating for some of the people that were joining us because they're like, hey, you told me this and now it's this and now it's this. I said, yes. But eventually we got to a point where we found a sweet spot. I think it was like 2.5 years into it, we found that sweet spot where we were at. And so we had defined those metrics. Then the performance reviews come in. You start having to develop a culture. One of the biggest things for me is work ethic, and I tell the entire staff I lead by example. And even when I was recruiting and selling and managing that aspect of it, I lead by example. I like to say that I always try to operate at the optimal rate that I can. And I want people to see that. That's what it's going to take. If you want to get to, believe me, I want to work my way out of my job. I want people to get me out of my job. And if you want to get me out of my job, this is what it's going to take. And so the standard was set from a cultural perspective that you come in, it's heads down, you know, yes, we can have fun, but it's a very strong work ethic culture. And I think that defined when you start at the base level like that, and everybody who comes on board, once you've got that core group, then everybody you hire basically just exponentially impacts that. And everybody starts having that culture because there is no other culture to look at, right? And so it was definitely a play hard, work hard culture, work hard, play hard culture. And it yielded the results that we wanted to yield. I mean, performance was really at a high level for most of the quarters that we were doing business every year. Folks came in. We very rarely had people leave us unless they just wanted to get out of the recruitment agency role and get into more of a corporate recruiting role where there's a little more stability. In staffing, there is these ebb and flows where there are good months, bad months. There's always that pressure, what have you done for me lately pressure. And so that pressure is constantly on. I mean, as soon as we walk in the morning, we have a 8 o'clock call with everybody who huddles, and that's when that tone is set. Hey, everybody's got to accomplish what they're saying they're going to accomplish on that call. And at evening time, that call happens again, and make sure that everybody has done that. And if not, why hasn't it been done, and how can we help to get it done? I learned a big lesson in that, Azaz. One of the big things I learned was, making mistakes. Today, even when we hire new people, first thing I tell them is don't be afraid to make a mistake. It's okay. It's the only way you'll learn. A lot of our hires were not from the staffing industry. So we had to teach them the career. We had to teach them the role, the industry, all the nuances about the industry, the challenging pieces, the great wins of the industry. And it was one of those things where I think just being able to give that confidence of, hey, it's okay to make a mistake to people, it allowed them to grow and without fear of getting reprimanded. And I think that was one of the biggest things I think we did in the recruiting and sales engine, both in ROI, but we let people make those mistakes and you grow from it exponentially because they never made those mistakes again.
Yeah.
So it was pretty
And
cool.
last thing on this, you said there are good months and bad months. What was the best month?
Best month was one client hired 45 people from me in 1 month,
Wow.
within a month. And they were starting a new project and we got 45 people onboarded within 30 days. It was a funny, we told all the hiring managers to get in a room, vetted the people, bringing one by one by one by one. And we were able to, we brought in like 52, 53 people and we hired 45 of them, which was pretty amazing. And not just me, but the credit goes obviously to my recruiting team back then. They did a phenomenal job and the sales team did a phenomenal job of developing that trust where they would come in and say, okay, we'll give it to you. we'll give it to you only. And that's something to be very proud of. But it was
Yeah,
great.
definitely. And now let's shift gears and let's bring Arthur Lawrence into the picture. So we've got ROI staffing, 14, $15 million in annual revenue, and all these success stories that you mentioned. Where and how does Arthur Lawrence now come into the picture?
I'll rewind a little bit. I sold my stake in ROI staffing some 8 years into it, and I moved to go help some family out in Jersey. My wife is from Jersey, so she and I had agreed that we'd go up there and help out some family. She wanted to be up there as well, so kind of everything worked out. You can say you can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl. So that's what happened. So we ended up back in New Jersey, and because I sold the business, I wasn't going to go back into that business in the geographic area. I had too much respect for my partner and the business as well that I had built. And so when I went to Jersey, I went to go work for a company and found myself, when you work for yourself for 7 or 8 years, it's hard to work for somebody else after that. A lesson learned, I went to go work for somebody and I realized that I can't do that. It didn't jive with me. And so then I departed from that organization, and I was Iris and departed from that organization and ended up starting doing consulting work for staffing companies. There was one particular company that had brought me on board to help them build their business development efforts and their training manuals and train their recruiting staff. And that was the service I offered for a couple of years. Then I had decided to move back to Houston after my non-compete was finished. And when I decided to move back, luckily I did not sell my house. So our current CFO and I used to live next to each other, right? And so when I told him I'm moving back and I'm going to start my own company in Houston, he said, don't do that. He said, talk to this guy I know. His name's Wajid Mirza. And I said, Wajid Mirza? I know a Wajid Mirza. I used to recruit for a client that he was a director at, but I think he was the hiring guy. He was the hiring manager, or his teams were hiring. And so I said, it can't be the same Wajid Mirza. But anyway, is it a guy who used to work at, waste management? And he said, that's him. I said, well, I know him. He said, well, how do you know him? He said, well, let me connect you to both. So we connected, and for about 6 months to a year, Wajid and I would meet, talk about, because I was still in the mindset that I would start my own company again. I wanted to start my own company again. And then Wajid kept talking to me about, he's got this platform already created, Arthur Lawrence. It's a brand. By default, they were a management consulting company. Then Arthur Lawrence back then was strictly just management consulting. And so he obviously did a lot of consulting engagements, very successful. And I was just not sure whether I wanted to be a part of that or not. And eventually, one of the reasons why I'm in business with him is the reason I joined him is because at the foundation level, me and him see very close eye to eye at the foundation level. He's a very kind person, very transparent person, and I would say probably one of the most honest individuals I've ever dealt with, period. And the transparency was really important to me. So we ended up deciding that we'd work together. He said, okay, come on board. Why don't you start the staffing practice, the recruitment practice here? They already had some recruiters. They were already doing it by default, because I think what happened is he would go on projects. They would come back to him and say, hey, we are needing another one of these guys over here or another one of your guys over here. So by default, it started happening already for him. And he had established a few clients already for a number of years. So when I joined him and I had discussed about how to grow the business, what do we need to do, where do we want to take it? And luckily, right around that time frame, my old business partner said, you know what, I think I'm going to retire from ROI staffing. He said, I'm going to retire. I'm going to sell the company. He said, obviously, you signed all the contracts. You're the one who chased all the contracts, got them all. Would you be interested in acquiring it? And I said, sure, absolutely. We will acquire it. I didn't even ask Wajid. I said, we'll acquire it. And then I went back to Wajid. I said, hey, we've got an opportunity to get ROI staffing. We should get it. It gives us legitimacy in the Houston market. It allows us to go back to some of my clients where I had originally signed on. And so within a period of 6 months after I joined Arthur Lawrence, we acquired ROI Staffing and made ROI Staffing an Arthur Lawrence company. And so it's gone through a little bit of rebranding, but nonetheless, we still do the core parts of recruiting. That company still operates today. We still have, 30 or 40 active contracts with clients in Houston. So it was a great platform for us to start to build upon. And starting from scratch anything is definitely difficult, and this has helped us speed up that process. So it made it a little bit easier.
So now this is like, what year are we in now? We're in
Now we're
somewhere around
in
2015 or so?
2016 now. When we
2016?
acquired, yeah, 2016 is when we acquired ROI.
Yeah. And now we have a very limited recruitment business at this point in time.
Yeah.
And you've acquired ROI Staffing, and of course, you've grown that. What happens now?
So I come in, I sort of put my arms around um, the business. We kind of really push and drive new business development, right? And developing relationships and developing clients and really trying to grow the staffing and recruiting business, right? And so that started happening. Obviously, I was back in the market. A lot of people still knew me in Houston, so they were willing to buy from me again. Some of the contracts that had expired, we had renewed them with ROI. So it started, we started moving that forward. I started then hiring internally at Arthur Lawrence for some salespeople. There was one I inherited, which I made her an account manager. So what was nice is that the pieces came together pretty, like, I don't want to say easily, but they came together magnetically. Like everybody kind of just gelled in. And my personality, working with Wajid's, strategic vision is I think really propelled the organization because he's great. He's a great strategy guy. He is, he has got great vision. And so he comes up with some pretty cool ideas, and I felt like at that moment, I was the guy. I could get on the ground and I could just, get the horse to move. And that's what we did. We just started putting, the name of the game was put boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground. We just want to get billing, 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 billing. And we started doing that and it just started going. And, we grew to the point where, we were on the Houston's Fast 100, one of the fastest growing 100 companies in Houston. We got awarded that by the Houston Business Journal. We grew in the minority business space. We won an award, one of the fastest growing minority businesses in Houston as well. And we just started putting our footprint in Houston. And over the course of these last few years now, we've gone really sort of national with that. And that's, because we've obviously added salespeople. They've started growing nationally. We've started growing from a government practice perspective, not only just in the private sector. Now we're in the public sector. We're working with several state contracts. And we've just recently got certified to work with the federal government as well now. So we're GSA certified. So it's pretty exciting times for us.
Yeah, sounds like it. And tell me about some of the stories from this time because it's been a decade now.
Yeah, one more recently, I'll tell you. We just signed a contract with the company that took us 3 years to get,
Three
and it
years is a
started.
magic mark for you.
It must be. It must be. I mean, this started by simply bumping into somebody in the lobby. What I would do is, I'm not super proud of it, but we did it anyway. Instead, a lot of times these big conferences happen and they are big ticket items. So you have to spend $3,000 to $5,000 to even get into some of these conferences. Well, what I would do is I'd say, I'll spend the money to get to the hotel where the conference is, and I'll have my targets who I need who I want to talk to. And after or in between, when somebody's in and out, I was one of the vultures, unfortunately, that would try to grab someone's attention for like literally 15 seconds, and that's all you have. I mean, they're walking to a mission to a session, and you're bumping into them saying, "Oh, I'm Bejal Patel with Arthur Lawrence, and I've seen that you're." Head of this contingent labor program, or you're head of the external workforce, global workforce. Can I talk to you for a few minutes about, what we do and what you do? You only have a few minutes to do that and a few seconds to do that. It's just so happened that one of the individuals that I was going after was a big fish. He happened to say, okay, you've got a few seconds. Talk to me while I walk. We probably talked for about 1 minute, and he said, it was nice talking to you, Patel. And that was it. And then I just kept following up with him, and I happened to find somebody, I found somebody somewhere who knew him and said, hey, can you broker a meeting? And so they brokered the meeting, and I came and we met, and this went on for full 3 years, dinners, meetings, lunches. web calls, video calls, FaceTime calls, like anything I would do. And eventually he's told me, he's like, okay, I'm going to give you a shot, but I'm not going to give you a shot to become a vendor. I'm just going to give you a shot to become a vendor through an RFP process. So you still have to win amongst
Yeah.
hundreds of companies. About 8 months ago, 9 months ago, we got that opportunity. I completed the RFP, submitted it to them, and we were blessed in November to find out that we were one of the vendors selected in their new vendor program. And so it was one of those things where countless hours were spent formulating emails, wrapping emails, formulating another email, sending thank you notes, trying to differentiate ourselves, selling the reasons on why we're different, and constantly reminding him and put in front of mind awareness why we should be a partner with them. And that's one of the things that I think I'm most proud of, is that 99% of our clients will tell you that we are partners to them. We're not just a vendor. And I think it's more of a long-term relationship that because getting the clients has been a journey. And so they get to know us in that journey. And that there's the sort of the romancing period where you start to know each other and dance with each other, and then you eventually hold hands, right? And so that has been a really like great sense of accomplishment to feel that hey, it took me 3 years, but we got them, and we're right now already doing business with them. And so it's definitely one of my prouder moments. Also, I mean, there's tons of stories I could tell you, but if you want me to pick another one, let me know. But there's tons of stories it's like that I've sort of, I think I could tell.
No, I can tell you're really passionate about it, and your eyes light up when you remember that moment when they signed that contract. And of course, for any sales guy, it's I mean, it's sheer euphoria. So what's next for Arthur Lawrence now? Because I mean, you've been through this transition, you've been in the space since you were going through the yellow pages and whatnot. And now, so much tech has come in and AI has come in more recently. The industry is changing. And Arthur Lawrence, like you mentioned, of course, has always been a partner. How are you looking to partner with companies through this ever-changing landscape, especially with AI coming in? What's the industry looking like now?
I like to think of it as sort of that Charles Dickens, the best of times are the worst of times, right? Um,
Yeah.
the best of times because AI has made our job easier to get information. The worst of times is that people use it not for the right purpose sometimes, right? There's so much going on when it comes to faking through interviews and using AI through interviews that you don't ever really get sometimes to know what the person really knows. And a lot of times we have to be so diligent on making sure we catch all of that. And they slip through the cracks. Even they're becoming a lot of candidates find themselves, I'll say majority are upfront and honest, but there are a handful that will utilize AI for those purposes. Like, hey, how do I shortcut my way and just at least get the person the information that he's looking for in the interview? And so we've put measures in place in our recruitment process, in our vetting process, that helps mitigate that risk. We've got proprietary sourcing platforms that we've created over the course of time. And these proprietary sourcing platforms are very unique. They all go down to building communities and really understanding that you can have a fantastic recruitment process, fantastic technology, but if your source is corrupt, then all of that goes amiss. So what's next for us is, I'd like to say right now we're roughly about a 25, $30 million company. We want to get to 100 million. And how do we do that? With the use of AI and with incorporating AI for our clients as well. One way is that AI has helped us develop um, practices to get new clients through information, and a lot of our salespeople and account executives and relationship managers use that information to create their own stories and develop processes that will allow them to go get new business. The second part is we've adapted like I said, technology in our recruitment process and the AI tools in our recruitment process that helps us mitigate the risk of trying to identify those who are trying to fake the system and do things that are negatively impacting the industry's reputation through that. Because the first thing, whenever you tell somebody, "Oh, I'm with a recruitment firm," they'll say, "Well, are you a body shop?" Right? And what they mean by that is, are you somebody who just puts, people in front of somebody and then builds their resume up and fakes their resume? At Arthur Lawrence, if you ever do that, if anybody ever does that, they'll be fired that day, that moment. And that's big on our culture, right? Like me in general, I preach to the team. Uh, we should integrity ethics is number one. If we can't find anybody, I'd rather tell the client, "Hey, I can't find somebody. Let me tell you, give me some more time. I got to try some different sources, different avenues, but I won't put somebody in front of them if I don't know." And we're not a quantity shop. One of the biggest things I tell every new client, if you're looking for somebody who's wanting to give you 10 resumes for every open role or 5 resumes for every role, we may not be your firm. We're going to come to you with the top 2 out of the top 5. I'm going to give you, out of my top 5, I'll provide you the top 2. And that should hit. I mean, we have a pretty high hit ratio. So if it doesn't, then we don't have all the information, or we're doing something wrong, and we need to go back to the drawing board. And we'll typically sit down with the client and have that conversation. But, you know, it's a great question you ask. It's always about AI and where's that taking Arthur Lawrence? I think it's definitely going to propel us obviously into some pretty amazing opportunity. I'm excited about it. The technology we're using on our recruitment side, how we're utilizing it, it really is, um, I think, helping us really define the finite candidates that our clients are looking for. And I think it's big because it helps in so many different aspects of that.
For sure. And you mentioned ethics and integrity. Is that also something along the lines of a personal motto that you, for example, have? Is there any sort of, any sort of belief system that you have that you bring to the workplace as well?
My big thing is be kind. Just be kind. I think that's one of the one of the best things you could do for anybody is just be kind to them. And I tell my team, kill with kindness. Kill with kindness. It doesn't matter how bad or how rude or what the situation is. If you are just kind to somebody, it changes that person's day. And they say the temperature of the office is the temperature of what the leader walks in at. And so whenever I walk into the office, the moment I open that door and walk in, I remember that, hey, people are going to gravitate to my energy and so no matter how perturbed or stressed or angry I get, I just try to remember that. Be kind to the person on the other line. You never know what they're going through, and you never know how a kind word changes the entire story. And so that's a big personal philosophy of mine, is just be kind. I tell my kids all the time, just be kind. Doesn't matter what or how. Be kind to the person you're talking to. Doesn't matter who they are.
I love that, honestly. And on that same note, are there any habits, any sort of routines? I know work ethic is a strong part of in your drive that has got you to this point, but anything else that you'd like to touch upon?
I think one of the things I've learned over the course of these 25 years in business for myself is that work ethic and talent, there's two different equations, right? And I think always, when it comes to, I think attitude and work ethic always win over talent. You could have a phenomenal talented individual with a bad attitude and it just kills the team. Or you could have a phenomenal attitude with somebody who doesn't know a thing, but man, that can change the entire direction of a company sometimes. That one person can change that attitude, the positive attitude that that person brings to the table. It's contagious. Energy is contagious. And I really, truly believe that if there's something I look for in people, it's attitude, it's obviously work ethic, but it's really that attitude, because I think the talent will come and go, but the attitude and work ethic will remain.
Love that. On that note, BJ, thank you so much for your time. You've shared some great stories with us, and it's been honestly, I've loved learning from you, your insights, those stories as well. I'm gonna keep those in mind. And the key takeaway: be kind.
be kind.
Thank you so much once again for your time. And yeah,
Thank you.
we'll see you soon.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.